Retired Navy Captain Jerry Hendrix is on the line. Jerry, how are you this fine Navy day?
Good morning, Colonel, and how is it doing out there at dark 30 on the left coast?
Absolutely no humidity.
Well, I'm in Maine right now, so temperatures and humidity are low here in Upper New England.
Oh, wow. Hey, Jerry, I wanted to talk to you about something that's near and dear to the hearts of everybody on the Hugh Hewitt radio program, which it definitely has a maritime bent. Now, of course, my family is all Navy, except for me. I was the green sheep. But I'm very, very concerned. I spent some time the weekend with my father, who's retired lieutenant commander from the Navy, talking Navy. And I got to say, I'm very, very concerned about naval culture. We had the BHR catch fire. We had the McCain and Fitzgerald collide. That's three capital ships off the playing board in the Pacific. How do we stack up in the Pacific right now?
Well, actually, we're in a losing position in the Pacific in terms of overall numbers. The Chinese have created a Navy now that's larger than 370 ships. We just got to 300 ships in the entire Navy, which we have to cover both Atlantic and Pacific as well as Mediterranean, Indian Ocean. We're a global world power where China right now has the ability to focus on just being a regional power. They're trying to inflate a sphere of influence in the Western Pacific. And although many people point out that a lot of the Chinese ships are short-range corvettes and frigates, the fact of the matter is those ships have really long-range missiles that allow them to control vast aspects of the Pacific Ocean, no matter where they're at.
Area denial.
In the sheer numbers game, the Chinese are winning right now in a big way. Now, Bonham Richard is off the board. We don't know whether she'll be stricken for the list or not.
What do you think?
My initial thought was at 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit for over 48 hours, we're going to have structural problems inside, and we'll probably have to take the ship off the list because, the Navy builds its ships for survivability. We need to be able to take a hit and keep fighting. And if that survivability is compromised, we will not expose our sailors, to that type of risk, in a wartime environment. Now, we'll have to let the inspection come back and tell us, and we really hope that she'll be able to return to service, but it will be years and hundreds of millions of dollars to repair that ship. If she does come back.
Now,
it will cost $3.5 billion to replace her if we have to build a new ship.
Wow. Look, when a capital ship goes down, whether it needs repair or has to be replaced, that just screws everything up. It screws up deployments. It screws up the use of naval shipyards and repair yards. It screws up the production schedule. This is a major disaster. But what if it happened during combat? In World War II, one of the ways that America finally managed to prevail after terrible setbacks at the beginning of the war, particularly in the Pacific, was we were able to not only build an incredible number of ships, but repair damaged ships. Like I believe Bunker Hill was one of them that was turned around very, very quickly. Was it Bunker Hill or Lexington?
It wasn't. Bunker Hill was a damaged ship. Also, USS Franklin was a fire damaged aircraft carrier that barely made it home, but we were able to get her repaired. She almost made it back into the war, but it took a long time. But you're right. During World War II, we had over 50 graving docks in the United States where we could bring U.S. Navy ships or even our merchant ships that were carrying supplies to Europe and put them in and repair them or to build new ships. Today, we have a population of less than 20 of those graving docks. And many of them are not large enough to take some of our larger capital vessels like the Bonham Richard. If the Congress just appropriated $3.5 billion tomorrow and said, give us a replacement, the fact of the matter is there really is no place in the United States to build that replacement right now. The yards where it could be built, they're booked. We're building ships right now, and so that population is kind of filled up. We need to add some redundancy and resiliency in that yard production schedule someplace in the country.
Well, Captain Jerry Hendrix, United States Navy, retired. There's a saying among the military that amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. That's what we're talking about here, though, logistics. How do we get the stuff built or repaired? And it's not fun, and it's not sexy, and it's a lot of hard work, but I think it's critical. And here's the problem. Even if tomorrow Congress said, okay, let's add 10 more of these yards that can build ships, where do we find the folks who have the skill sets to actually do the work?
This is a great topic, and it's one that I've raised a lot of times. We've spent the last 30 years in this country, sort of denying or degrading the importance of some of our trade skills in the country. But when it comes to making a good living, if you're a pipe fitter or a welder, electrician, heating and air conditioning person, those people are critical skills for us in our shipyards, and we simply don't have enough. So you're right. If we stood up a new shipyard tomorrow and said, go build me ships, the fact is it's going to take a couple years to grow that population of skilled workers in order to begin building the ships. And we have to step in, I think, as a nation and sort of take management. I'm a capitalist, but at the same time, the idea is the defense industrial base or the shipbuilding base is such a critical strategic asset. If you want to know really what is the key strategic asset of the country, it's really its economy.
Yep.
The ability to generate, ships, tanks, airplanes are great, but the fact is they're products of our economy, and we don't pay enough attention to the size of that economy and that resilience that they're to be able to produce things. And so that's one of the things that the president looked at a couple of years ago, and I hope that the report that came out of the White House at that time is examined more closely, especially now. But back to the Bonhomme Richard real quick, that ship was going to be critical for the next 10 years in the Pacific because she had just been modified to the tune of several $100 million to incorporate the F-35B. She was going to be at the center of the Marine Corps' operations in the Pacific, and she's gone now from that plan. We have to make up the Bonhomme Richard across the next 10 years.
The Navy, among all the services, is it focuses on things. People are physically in these giant machines we call ships. But I think you'll agree with me, because you're a leader too, that what the Navy really is about sailors. It's about people and leadership, and it's about culture. The naval culture of World War II that brought us that great victory, that's now 70, 75 years old. We're going, and I think we've been putting a lot of weight on it and a lot of stress on it. And we're facing the Chinese, who are creating their own culture, and they've got some problems with their political command structure that we believe is going to give us some advantage. But is it possible we are relying too much on past glory of our naval culture when we look at the enemy? I mean, you look at a ship like the Prince of Wales and Repulse, which are British ships, which were sunk by the Japanese. The British, who had controlled the seas for decades, hundreds of years even, thought, oh, the Japanese can't possibly take them down. And they went down in an afternoon. What do you think?
Oh, I agree with you. And as a historian, I'm always worried. We always thought that the battleship was going to be the centerpiece of naval fighting until the Japanese took away our battleships on December 7th, and suddenly we discovered the aircraft carrier was the central cog. And we've been thinking that now for the last 77 years. The need to constantly re-examine and critically think about the way the next war would be fought, and not just assume that the next war would be fought like the last war was, is part of the day-to-day requirements of being a leader in the Navy, or for that matter in the Army, the Air Force. Everyone's got to step back and just take a look at their assumptions and critically question them. The Chinese are moving out. It's kind of interesting. The Chinese are moving out asymmetrically in that they're making a lot of investments in long-range standoff missiles, but at the same time, they're mirroring us by trying to build aircraft carriers and heavy cruisers and destroyers right now, because they're not quite sure which way is going to work, but they're willing to experiment across a broad span. We seem to be really focused on some critical assets like our supercarriers and their accompanying force. And I'm worried that we're not experimenting enough with what I call the high-low mix of looking for our own asymmetric advantages that are going to make the Chinese question whether they can be effective today. That's all I need. make sure that they question whether they can be effective today, so they don't start that war today, and then do it tomorrow.
One of the
and that's go ahead.
One of the problems with any military is, it's a cliche. They always want to fight the last war, but guys like you and me, we were trained to fight Russians and Soviet tactics, and that's kind of what we default to in our own minds. I think you're absolutely right that we have to be open to new ideas and ideas that disrupt, particularly unmanned aircraft. Do you think? And we only have about 20 seconds, and this your answer may tick off some of your Navy buddies. Do you think that we need to move away from manned aircraft to unmanned aircraft in the future in the Navy?
So absolutely. I've been writing about this for 10 years. Did a major paper on this called Retreat from Range that says we need to incorporate unmanned aircraft, specifically unmanned combat aerial vehicles that can haul ordnance a long way onto our aircraft carrier deck. That's the way of the future.
Thank you very much, Captain Retired Jerry Hendrix, United States Navy. This is Kurt Schlichter on the Hugh Hewitt program.